And folks, as we see here in Reuters report, Trump is reviving an 18th century law, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, to fast-track mass deportations and bypass due process. Of course he is. If that law rings a bell, it's because it justified the internment of Japanese Americans, the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. Let's not mince words here. And here is the kicker for all of us, for this community. It was written by the so-called patriot heroes of the American Revolution. We are fed a myth that the founders fought for liberty and democracy. But the Alien Enemies Act tells a different story. They were just as eager to exclude, control, and stoke fear as the leaders who invoke it today. That law was passed under John Adams, who enthusiastically supported it. Yes, that John Adams. The John Adams who supposedly championed American freedoms, the exception to all of the enslaver rules. Well, hold on. In reality, his administration oversaw speech crackdowns, deportations, and a direct assault on the very liberties that he claimed to defend as political protection in the name of national security. Back then, the Alien Enemies Act targeted French and Irish immigrants who opposed Adams' federalist regime. How? Because they were suspected of being sympathetic to the French Revolution, the one that actually turned the world upside down. Today, it's being resurrected to deport modern asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants. No trial, no appeal, and we've seen it used before as a cudgel. During World War II, it was a legal basis for branding Japanese Americans, let's focus on the second word of that term, as enemies, paving the way for incarceration camps, taking away their property, depriving them of everything. That wasn't about real security either. It was about fear, racism, and power. So what does this say about the Patriots? The moment that these so-called heroes took power, they clamped down on dissent and deported people they feared, anyone who they disagreed with them, who threatened their political authority. Sound familiar? Trump and his allies embraced the founders precisely because the founders weren't fighting for everyone's liberty. They were fighting for their own. The Alien Enemies Act proves American law has long been a tool to exclude and control rather than protect and empower, which is why there are no constitutional ways to actually unroll what it is that they're doing. If the founders truly cared about freedom for all, why are modern authoritarians so eager to use their laws for some of the most repressive policies in U.S. history, so eager to reach for their words to justify their actions? The truth? They didn't fight for your freedom. They fought for theirs, often at everyone else's expense. The real battle for liberty isn't about clinging to a romanticized version of 1776 or 1787. It's about ending this cycle of exclusion, fear, and suppression that began the moment these so-called patriots took power, and they took power quickly. Before anyone who wasn't with them knew what was going on, had the ability to be able to understand exactly what was at stake. When Trump cites the founders' laws, he's doing it exactly as they intended, not against them. So stop posting images of George Washington flipping off Trump. George Washington would be hugging him because they're doing exactly what he intended to do. Wielding those laws to maintain control, to silence dissent, and defend a narrow idea of who gets to be free, of who deserves to be a citizen in a country of liberty. And ask yourself, is that really the vision of America worth defending? Or can we do better? Before we wrap up, I want to share a few recommended reads if you're curious about how the Alien Enemies Act and the Alien and Sedition Acts fit into a long history of exclusion and fear-mongering in the United States. First up, the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, Testing the Constitution by Terri Halperin from Johns Hopkins Press. This book dives deep into all four of the acts, and it shows how the Federalists weaponized them to suppress dissent and target immigrants. It's exactly the point I've been making about the founders' real motivations. Next, Erika Lee's America for Americans, A History of Xenophobia in the United States from Basic Books. Lee covers a broad sweep of U.S. history, but she draws a clear line between early immigration laws and the enduring tradition of scapegoating and fear that still shapes our policies today. And then finally, by order of the president, FDR and the internment of Japanese Americans by Greg Robinson from Harvard Press. This one lays out how the Alien Enemies Act made it easier for the government to place Japanese Americans into incarceration camps during World War II, tying that 1798 law directly to one of the most flagrant civil rights violations of the 20th century. So check out those resources to see how deeply rooted these exclusionary tactics are, because the more we know about how we got here, and this is the role of public history, to learn how we got from then to now and how we relate to one another, then the clearer it becomes that our founding myths rarely match the historical reality, and it gives us ammunition to fight them today.